She needed someone dangerous enough to scare her toxic ex, so she sat on a stranger's lap and whispered for him to please help her. The stranger happened to be Chicago's most powerful mafia boss. His response was simple: "Then you'll leave with me tonight." The wine glass shattered against the wall, 6 inches from Mara's head. She didn't flinch. Not anymore. 3 years of dating Daniel Chun had taught her that flinching only made him angrier, made him feel powerful. So she sat perfectly still in the burgundy booth of Aurelio's, the most expensive Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago, and watched red wine drip down the cream-colored wallpaper like blood. Daniel's voice was low and venomous, the kind of quiet that was worse than shouting. "You think you're better than me now? You think because you got that pathetic office job, you can just ignore my calls?" Around them, conversations had stopped. Crystal clinked awkwardly against china. A woman in diamonds at the next table had her phone out, probably texting her friends about the drama. The head waiter was approaching, his face a mask of professional concern that barely hid his desire for them to disappear. Mara's hands were shaking in her lap. She'd been so stupid. Stupid to agree to this reunion dinner. Stupid to think Daniel had changed after 6 months of silence. Stupid to hope. He just wanted closure. He'd never wanted closure. He wanted control. "Daniel, please," she started. "Please what?" He leaned across the table, his breath sharp with whiskey. "You blocked me. You blocked my number like I was nothing. Like we were nothing." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, hard enough to bruise. "You don't get to just leave me, Mara." That's when she saw him. 3 tables away, facing her direction, sat a man who didn't belong in the nervous, wealthy crowd of Aurelio's. He belonged somewhere darker, somewhere more dangerous. He was alone, which was the first strange thing. Men like him, and even without knowing his name, Mara knew he was someone, never ate alone. They had people, guards, associates. But he sat there in a black suit that probably cost more than her car, reading something on his phone with the focused calm of a predator. He was maybe in his late 30s with dark hair swept back, olive skin, and a jaw that looked carved from stone. A thin scar ran through his left eyebrow, pale against his tan. As if feeling her stare, his eyes lifted. They were dark, not brown, something deeper. Black coffee, midnight, and they assessed her situation in exactly 2 seconds. Daniel's grip tightened on her wrist, yanking her attention back. "Are you even listening to me? Who are you looking at?" The head waiter arrived. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to." "Mind your own business," Daniel snarled without looking at him. Something inside Mara snapped. Not the violent break of anger, but the clean cut of a decision. She'd spent 3 years being afraid. 3 years letting Daniel gaslight her, manipulate her, isolate her from friends who tried to warn her. 3 years watching herself disappear piece by piece. Not tonight. She stood so abruptly, her chair scraped backward. Daniel's hand slipped from her wrist, his expression shifting to confusion. The entire restaurant was watching now. Good. Let them watch. Mara didn't think. Thinking was what had kept her trapped. She strode across the restaurant floor in her simple black dress and discount heels, past tables full of frozen diners, past the head waiter, whose mouth had fallen open, straight to the table where the dangerous man sat. He watched her approach with those unreadable dark eyes, his phone now forgotten on the white tablecloth. Mara didn't ask permission. She didn't hesitate. She walked right up to him and sat down on his lap. His body went rigid beneath her. He was solid muscle, she realized dimly, warm, real. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. She turned her face toward his ear, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with adrenaline and terror and desperate hope. "Please, just help me." For one horrible second, nothing happened. She'd made a catastrophic mistake. This man was going to throw her off, humiliate her, leave her even more vulnerable than before. Then his arm came around her waist, slowly, possessively. The weight of it was both terrifying and anchoring. He leaned in, his lips nearly touching her ear, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her whole body. "Then you'll leave with me tonight." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a suggestion. It was a contract, and she just signed it in desperation and borrowed courage. Mara pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Up close, they were even more intense. Ancient, knowing, dangerous. But there was something else there, too. A flicker of curiosity, maybe even respect. She nodded, one small dip of her chin. The man's gaze lifted past her, and his entire demeanor changed. The curiosity vanished, replaced by something cold and absolute. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Is there a problem? His voice carried across the restaurant, casual and lethal at once. Mara didn't need to turn around to know Daniel was standing there. She could feel his rage like heat at her back. Who the hell do you think you are? Daniel's voice was shaking now, with anger or fear she couldn't tell. Mara, get up now. The arm around her waist tightened fractionally. The lady's fine where she is. The man's voice was calm, bored almost. But underneath it was a blade. You should leave. Do you know who I don't care. 3 words delivered with the weight of absolute truth. Leave now. The silence that followed was deafening. Mara finally turned her head to see Daniel's face, red, twisted with impotent fury, and something she'd never seen before. Fear. Daniel looked between them, his fists clenched. For a moment she thought he might actually swing. Then his eyes caught on something. Maybe the way the other diners were staring. Maybe the 2 men in dark suits who had somehow materialized near the entrance. Maybe just the cold certainty in the dangerous man's eyes. He stepped back. You're going to regret this, Mara, both of you. Then he turned and stormed toward the exit, shoving past a waiter hard enough to send a tray clattering. The restaurant remained frozen. Phones were definitely out now. Camera flashes sparked in her peripheral vision. Mara realized she was still sitting on a stranger's lap, his arms still around her waist. She should move. She should apologize. Explain. Run. What's your name? He asked quietly. Mara, her voice came out steadier than she expected. Mara Santos. Mara Santos. He repeated it like he was committing it to memory. I'm Vittorio Romano. The name hit her like ice water. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, even if they pretended not to. The Romano family wasn't just wealthy. They were connected, powerful. The kind of power that didn't come from tech stocks or real estate, but from loyalty, fear, and blood. She just sat on a mafia boss's lap. Oh God, she whispered. Too late for prayers, Vittorio said, and she could hear the dark amusement in his voice. You made your choice. Now we see where it leads. His hand moved to hers, his thumb brushing across the red marks Daniel's grip had left on her wrist. Something shifted in his expression, hardened. My car's outside, he said, releasing her waist so she could stand. You're coming with me. It should have sounded like a threat. Somehow, it sounded like a promise. Mara rose on shaking legs, knowing that everything had just changed. Mara's phone had 63 notifications when she woke up. She stared at the ceiling of her cramped studio apartment, her body still humming with residual adrenaline from the night before. Vittorio's driver had dropped her off at 11 p.m., without a word, watching until she was safely inside. She triple-locked her door and collapsed into bed, fully clothed. Now, more light filtered through her thin curtains, and reality was crashing down hard. She grabbed her phone. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Instagram requests from gossip accounts. 3 voicemails from her concerned roommate-turned-friend Jackie, who had moved to Boston last year. The worst was the photo. It was everywhere. TMZ, Chicago social scene, even a local news blog. The image was surprisingly clear. Her sitting on Vittorio Romano's lap, his arm around her waist, both of them looking at someone off camera. Daniel, probably. The caption read, Mystery woman gets cozy with Chicago's most dangerous bachelor. Who is she? Oh, no. Mara pressed her palms against her eyes. She had work in an hour, Kensington and Associates, the corporate law firm where she'd been a receptionist for 3 months. It was boring, underpaid, and utterly normal, exactly what she needed after escaping Daniel's chaos. Had needed. Past tense. She showered quickly, dressed in her usual work outfit, gray slacks, a white blouse, minimal makeup, and tried to pretend she was just Mara Santos, invisible office assistant. Not the woman who'd made a spectacle of herself with a mafia boss. The moment she walked into the office, she knew pretending was useless. Conversation stopped. Eyes followed her. Kelly from accounting actually gasped. Mara, her supervisor, Patricia, a sharp woman in her 50s, intercepted her at the reception desk. My office, now. Mara's stomach dropped. She'd been here 3 months. She needed this job. The rent was due in 2 weeks. Patricia closed the office door and turned, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. So, Vittorio Romano, it's not what it looks like. Honey, I don't care what it looks like. Patricia sat on the edge of her desk. But you need to know that everyone's talking about it, partners included. Some find it exciting. Others, she paused. Others are concerned about what kind of attention you might bring to the firm. I'm not. We're not. It was just one moment. A mistake. Was it? Patricia's eyes were shrewd, because there are black SUVs parked outside right now. 3 of them. Mara's blood went cold. She rushed to the window. Sure enough, 3 black Escalades sat along the curb, tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. As she watched, the door of the center vehicle opened. Vittorio Romano stepped out. He looked different in daylight, sharper, more real. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, his dark hair perfectly styled. 2 men in black flanked him immediately, scanning the street with professional precision. "I think," Patricia said carefully, "you should go see what he wants." Mara's hands were shaking again. "I could lose my job. You could lose a lot more than that if you ignore a man like him." Patricia's voice softened. "Go, I'll cover for you." The elevator ride down felt like descending into cold water. By the time Mara pushed through the building's glass doors, a small crowd of onlookers had gathered at a respectful distance. Office workers on their coffee breaks, a few brave photographers. Vittorio saw her immediately. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, relaxed almost. "Miss Santos." His voice carried just enough to be heard. Formal, respectful. "May I have a moment?" Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she walked forward, stopping a few feet away. "I'm at work. I know." He gestured to the building behind her. "Kensington and Associates, you've been here 3 months. Before that, you worked at Stella's Diner in Lincoln Park for 2 years. The casual knowledge of her life was chilling. "Have you been investigating me?" "It's called due diligence." He stepped closer, lowering his voice, so only she could hear. "Your ex-boyfriend spent last night making calls. Angry calls to people who listen when scared men offer information." Mara's mouth went dry. "What people?" "Rival families. Small-time operators looking to make names for themselves." Vittorio's dark eyes locked onto hers. "Daniel told them you're my weakness. That hurting you would hurt me, but I'm not. We're not. Doesn't matter what we are. Matters what they think." His jaw tightened. "You sat on my lap in front of 50 witnesses and a dozen cameras. In my world, that's a statement." The morning air suddenly felt too thin. "This is insane. I just needed help getting away from him, and I helped. Now there are consequences." He pulled something from his pocket, a business card with just a phone number. "I'm offering you protection, a place to stay until this calms down." "No." The word came out harder than she intended. "I'm not running from one controlling man into the arms of another." Something flickered across Vittorio's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "I'm not Daniel," he said quietly. "You're worse. He could ruin my life. You could end it." Vittorio was silent for a long moment. Around them, phones were definitely recording. Tomorrow's gossip cycle. "You're right," he finally said. "I could, but I won't." He held out the card. "Take it anyway. You don't have to use it. But if something happens..." "Nothing's going to happen." Mara didn't take the card. "I appreciate what you did last night, really. But I'm done with men who think they know what's best for me." She turned and walked back toward the building, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. "Mara." She stopped but didn't turn around. "Your apartment building doesn't have security cameras on the back entrance," Vittorio called out. "Just so you know." The word sent ice down her spine. Was that a threat? A warning? She looked back. Vittorio was already getting into his SUV, his guards following. The vehicles pulled away smoothly, disappearing into Chicago traffic. The crowd dispersed, disappointed the show was over. Mara went back inside, Patricia's concerned face greeting her in the lobby. "You okay?" "Yeah." Mara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Yeah, I'm fine." She wasn't fine. That night, after a shift that felt like swimming through honey, everyone staring, no one asking, Mara took the bus home. The card Vittorio had tried to give her was still in his pocket, but his words echoed in her head. Her apartment building was old, 6 units, questionable plumbing. The landlord was cheap, no security cameras, like Vittorio said. She'd never thought about it before. She climbed the stairs to her 3rd-floor unit, keys already in hand. That's when she saw him. A man stood at the far end of the hallway, partially hidden in the shadows near the stairwell exit. Baseball cap, dark jacket. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, but something about his stillness was wrong. When he saw her looking, he smiled. Then he turned and walked down the stairs, his footsteps echoing. Mara's hands shook so badly she dropped her keys. She snatched them up, fumbled with her locks, threw herself inside, and bolted the door. She stood there breathing hard, her back against the door. Her phone was in her hand before she consciously decided to reach for it. She had no business card, no number, but she had Google. Her fingers typed Vittorio Romano contact. Nothing useful. Just news articles, speculation, photos from last night. She tried again. Romano family, Chicago. An address appeared. Romano's Fine Imports, warehouse in the industrial district. Mara stared at it. She was probably overreacting. The man in the hall was probably just a neighbor she'd never met. Daniel was all talk. Vittorio was just trying to scare her into accepting his help. Probably. She looked at her door. One chain lock, 2 deadbolts that barely worked. Then she looked at the address on her phone. Damn it, she whispered. Maybe Vittorio had been right after all. Mara didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch with all the lights on, a kitchen knife on the cushion beside her, jumping at every sound. The radiator clinking, a car alarm 3 blocks away, footsteps in the hallway that passed her door and kept going. By 6 a.m., she'd convinced herself she was paranoid, exhausted and paranoid. She had to go to work. She had to maintain normal. That's what you did when your life was falling apart. You pretended it wasn't. The morning was overcast, threatening rain. Mara pulled on her coat and grabbed her bag, checking the hallway before stepping out. Empty. The man from last night was gone. See? Paranoid. She made it down 2 flights of stairs before her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You should have taken his offer. Her blood turned to ice. Another message. Too late now. Mara's fingers fumbled with her phone, trying to call 911 when she heard it. Footsteps on the stairs below. Heavy. Multiple sets coming up fast. She spun and ran back up, her heels loud on the concrete steps, her apartment. She just needed to get back to her apartment. 3rd floor. She burst through the stairwell door into the hallway. They were waiting. 3 men, early 20s maybe. Tattoos crawling up their necks. One wore a Saints jersey. Another had a scar splitting his lip. The third was massive, arms like tree trunks. There she is, Saints jersey said with a grin that made her skin crawl. Romano's girl. I'm not. Mara backed toward the stairwell, but she heard footsteps behind her. The men from below had caught up. She was trapped. Word is you're real special to him, Scarred Lips said, moving closer. Sat right on his lap in front of everybody. Bold move. That was a mistake. I don't even know him. Sure you don't. The massive one cracked his knuckles. That's why he showed up at your work this morning. That's why his boys have been circling the stump all day. His boys. Mara's mind raced. Had Vittorio posted guards? She hadn't seen anyone. See, our boss is real interested in sending Romano a message, Saints jersey continued. And you're going to be that message, sweetheart. Scarred Lip grabbed her arm. His grip was iron. Nothing like Daniel's angry squeezes. This was professional violence, cold and practiced. Let go of me. Mara drove her knee up, aiming for his groin. She missed, hit his thigh, but it made him grunt and loosen his grip enough for her to yank free. She ran, not toward her apartment. That was a dead end. Toward the main stairwell, the one that led to the lobby. If she could get to the street, to people, to witnesses. A hand caught the back of her coat and hauled her backward. She hit the wall hard, stars exploding behind her eyes. Feisty, the massive one laughed. Romano likes them feisty, huh? Mara screamed, loud, primal, the kind of scream that came from 3 years of swallowing her voice with Daniel, 3 years of being afraid. Shut her up. The stairwell door exploded open. 2 men in dark suits moved like they'd trained for this exact moment. The first one drove his fist into Scarred Lip's face with a sickening crunch. The second caught Saints jersey's arm mid-swing and twisted it behind his back with practiced efficiency. The massive one released Mara and charged the first guard. Big mistake. The guard sidestepped smoothly and used the attacker's momentum to send him crashing into the wall. It was over in maybe 15 seconds. The 3 thugs were on the ground, 2 unconscious, 1 groaning and clutching his arm. The 2 guards weren't even breathing hard. Miss Santos, the first guard, older, salt and pepper hair, a professional demeanor, turned to her. Are you hurt? Mara slid down the wall until she was sitting, her legs unable to hold her anymore. Who are you? Marco. That's Tony. He gestured to the other guard. Mr. Romano's security detail. We've been watching your building since last night. He knew. Her voice came out flat. He knew this would happen. He anticipated it. Yes. Marco pulled out his phone. I'm calling him now. No, don't. But Marco was already talking. Sir, 3 hostiles. Miss Santos is unharmed. No, sir. Yes, sir. He held out the phone to Mara. He wants to speak with you. She stared at the phone like it might bite. Then slowly, she took it. Are you hurt? Vittorio's voice was tight, controlled fury barely leashed. No. Your men stopped them. My men shouldn't have had to stop them. You should have been somewhere safe. A pause. I'm 5 minutes away. You don't need to. 5 minutes. He hung up. Mara handed the phone back to Marco. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called. Doors were opening along the hallway, neighbors peering out. She looked at the men on the ground. One was stirring, blood running from his nose. These weren't Daniel's friends playing tough. These were real criminals sent by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. True to his word, Vittorio arrived in 4.5 minutes. Mara heard him before she saw him, his footsteps on the stairs, purposeful and furious. He came through the stairwell door like a storm, his dark eyes sweeping the scene and landing on her with an intensity that stole her breath. He crouched in front of her, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not touching. Did they hurt you? Bruises, that's all. His jaw clenched. He turned to Marco. Names. Working on it, sir. Vittorio looked back at Mara. This is why I came to your office. Not to control you, to warn you. His voice dropped. You think I want this responsibility? I have enough people to protect. Then why? Because you sat on my lap and asked for help. In my world, that means something. He stood, offering his hand. You have 2 choices now. Come with me to somewhere secure, or stay here and wait for them to send more. Better armed, less obvious. Mara looked around her hallway. The peeling paint, the flickering fluorescent light, the 3 unconscious men who'd come to hurt her. Her normal life, her safe, boring normal life, it was gone. The moment she'd made that desperate choice at Aurelio's, it was gone. If I go with you, she said slowly, what exactly does that mean? It means you stay at my property under guard until I find out who sent them and make it clear you're untouchable. His expression softened slightly. It means you're safe. And in return, you don't do anything stupid like refuse protection when people are actively trying to kidnap you. Despite everything, Mara almost smiled. Almost. That's it? That's it. He extended his hand again. I'm not Daniel, Mara. I don't need to control you to feel powerful, but I do need you to trust that I know how to handle this. Police sirens were getting closer. Marco was speaking rapidly into his phone, coordinating something. Mara took Vittorio's hand. His grip was warm, steady. He pulled her to her feet easily. I'll need to pack. Tony's already in your apartment. He'll bring whatever you need. Vittorio's hand moved to her back, guiding her toward the stairs. We're leaving now. Just like that? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw past the cold control to something deeper, genuine concern, maybe even fear. Just like that, he said, because next time I might not get here in time. Mara let herself be led down the stairs, past the gathering crowd, into the back of a black SUV, where the leather seats were soft and the windows were bulletproof. She'd asked a mafia boss for help. Now she was living with the consequences. The Romano estate sat 40 minutes outside Chicago, hidden behind 12-foot stone walls and iron gates that looked like they belonged to a medieval fortress. As the SUV rolled up the curved driveway, Mara pressed her face to the window, taking it all in. The villa was massive. 3 stories of pale stone and dark wood with arched windows that gleamed in the late afternoon sun. Manicured gardens stretched on either side, and a fountain, an actual fountain with marble lions, dominated the circular courtyard. This wasn't wealth. This was legacy, generations of power built into every brick. It's a bit much, Vittorio said, watching her reaction. It's terrifying, Mara answered honestly. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Good instincts. The car stopped. Marco opened her door, and Mara stepped out onto cobblestones that were probably older than her grandmother. Men in suits, guards she assumed, stood at attention near the entrance. Their eyes tracked her with professional assessment. Not hostile, exactly, just measuring. The massive front doors opened before they reached them. A woman in her 60s appeared, steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun, wearing black slacks and a white blouse. Her expression could have frozen water. Mr. Romano, her voice was crisp. Your guest. The word guest sounded like an insult. Mrs. Chen, this is Mara Santos. Vittorio's tone was neutral. She'll be staying in the East Wing. Make sure she has everything she needs. Mrs. Chen's eyes swept over Mara. Her discount coat, her scuffed heels, her definitely not designer bag. The judgment was silent but absolute. Of course, sir. Vittorio turned to Mara. I have business to attend to. Mrs. Chen will show you to your room if you need anything. I'll be fine, Mara said quickly. She didn't want to seem helpless. Not here. He studied her for a moment, then nodded and disappeared through a doorway with Marco. The silence that followed was suffocating. This way. Mrs. Chen turned without waiting, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Mara followed her through a foyer that belonged in a museum, a crystal chandelier, oil paintings in gilded frames, a staircase that curved up like something from a movie. Everything was beautiful. Everything was cold. "You'll stay in the East Wing," Mrs. Chen said as they climbed. "Mr. Romano's private quarters are in the West Wing. You are not to enter that area without permission. I wouldn't. The staff has been with the Romano family for decades. We are loyal. We are discreet." Mrs. Chen paused at the top of the stairs, turning to face her. "We also recognize opportunists when we see them." Mara stopped. "Excuse me, you heard me." Mrs. Chen's eyes were hard. "Girls like you come and go. They see a powerful man and think they can. I'm not here by choice," Mara interrupted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Men tried to kidnap me this morning. I'm here because it's the only safe place right now. That's it." Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. "Of course, how convenient for you." She continued down the hallway. Mara forced herself to follow, anger bubbling under her skin. She'd escaped one controlling situation only to land in another where everyone assumed the worst of her. The room was stunning. A four-poster bed, antique furniture, windows overlooking the gardens, a bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool. It should have felt like luxury. Instead, it felt like a gilded cage. "Dinner is at 7, Mrs. Chen said from the doorway. "Appropriate attire is expected. I don't have. There are clothes in the closet, courtesy of Mr. Romano." Her lips thinned. "He thinks of everything." Then she left, closing the door with a soft click. Mara sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. She'd been attacked, rescued, and transported to a world she didn't understand. And everyone here thought she was some kind of gold digger. Fine, let them think it. At 7 p.m. sharp, Mara made her way downstairs. She'd found a simple black dress in the closet. Tasteful, modest, expensive. It fit perfectly, which was somehow more unsettling than if it hadn't. Voices echoed from the dining room, male voices speaking rapid Italian. She recognized Vittorio's low rumble. Mara straightened her spine and walked in. The room went silent. Vittorio sat at the head of a long mahogany table. 3 men flanked him, older, dangerous-looking, wearing suits that couldn't hide the violence in their eyes. Guards lined the walls. Mrs. Chen stood near a serving cart, her face impassive. "Gentlemen," Vetro said smoothly, "this is Mara Santos. Mara, these are my advisors." The man to Vetro's right, balding, sharp-eyed, round 50, looked her up and down. "The girl from the restaurant." "Woman?" Mara corrected before she could stop herself. "I'm 25, not 12. The sharp-eyed man's eyebrows rose. Vittorio's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "Enzo Caruso," the man said. "Mr. Romano's consigliere. I handle complications." The implication was clear. She was a complication. "Nice to meet you," Mara said, taking the empty seat near the middle of the table. Not at the head like she belonged, but not at the far end like she was beneath them. Enzo's eyes narrowed. "Tell me, Miss Santos, what exactly were you hoping to gain by your little performance at Aurelio's?" "Enzo." Vittorio's voice carried a warning. "It's a fair question, boss. She appears out of nowhere, sits on your lap in public, and suddenly she's under your roof." Enzo leaned forward. "That's quite an upgrade from a studio apartment in Lincoln Park." Mara met his gaze without flinching. "You're right. It is an upgrade. Your boss has running water that doesn't turn brown, heat that actually works, and guards who prevent people from trying to kidnap me. Huge improvements." One of the other men, younger, with a scar through his eyebrow, snorted. Enzo wasn't amused. "You think this is funny? You've brought attention to this family. Heat, questions. All because you needed a knight in shining armor." "I needed a human shield," Mara corrected. "There's a difference, and I didn't ask for cameras or gossip blogs. I asked for 30 seconds of help. Everything else? That's not on me. Everything else is exactly on you. Enough." Vittorio's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Mara is here because I brought her here. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me privately." Enzo sat back, jaw tight. The message was clear. Dinner was served in tense silence. Mara ate mechanically, aware of every eye on her, judging every move. The food was incredible, real Italian, nothing like the reheated pasta she usually ate, but it could have been cardboard for all she tasted it. When Mrs. Chen brought out dessert, Mara stood. "Thank you for dinner. I'm tired. I'll be in my room." She didn't wait for permission. She walked out with her head high, feeling Vitozoncho's eyes on her back. She made it to her room before her hands started shaking again. This place was beautiful and terrifying. The people here saw her as either a threat or a joke. She didn't belong. She'd never belong. A knock on her door made her jump. "Come in." Vittorio entered, closing the door behind him. In the dim light of her room, he looked less like a mafia boss and more like just a man. Tired, concerned. "You handled Enzo well," he said. "He hates me. He suspects you. It's his job." Vittorio moved closer. "But you didn't cry or apologize or try to make them like you. You stood your ground. What else was I supposed to do? Most people would have crumbled." His dark eyes studied her face. "You're stronger than you look, Mara Santos." "I've had practice," she said quietly. Understanding passed between them. She'd survived Daniel. She'd survived this morning. She'd survived this, too. "Get some rest," Vittorio said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow we start finding out who wants you hurt and why." "Vittorio?" He paused. "Thank you for not letting them eat me alive down there." His mouth curved slightly. "They're testing you. Pass enough tests and they'll stop. And if I don't pass, you will." He said it with absolute certainty. "Good night, Mara." After he left, Mara lay in the massive bed, staring at the ornate ceiling. She'd entered the lion's den. Now she just had to survive it. Mara woke to hushed voices outside her door. Don't trust her. She shows up out of nowhere, and suddenly, "Lower your voice." She could hear. Good. Maybe she should know we're watching. The voices faded down the hallway. Mara lay still, staring at the ornate ceiling. Day 2, in the Romano villa, and the welcome mat was already being pulled out from under her. She dressed in jeans and a sweater from the mysteriously well-stocked closet and ventured downstairs. The house felt different in daylight, less imposing, more lived in. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes and the worn spots on expensive vugs. The kitchen was at the back of the villa. Mara followed the smell of coffee and found a large room with commercial-grade appliances and a woman in her 40s chopping vegetables with aggressive precision. "Good morning," Mara said. The woman, dark hair, in a braid, flour dusting her apron, looked up with barely concealed irritation. "Breakfast ended an hour ago." "Oh, I didn't know there was a schedule." "There's always a schedule." The knife came down hard on a carrot. "Mr. Romano eats at 7, staff at 6:30. Guests?" She paused meaningfully. "Guests can fend for themselves." Mara's stomach growled, but she kept her voice pleasant. "Is there coffee at least? Help yourself." The woman gestured vaguely toward a pot without looking up. Mara poured a cup, the silence stretching uncomfortably. She was about to leave when the woman spoke again. "You know what you're doing here?" "Staying alive," Mara said simply. The knife paused, dot mid-chop. The woman finally looked at her properly. "You think this is a joke? This family doesn't need complications. We've got enough problems without some girl." "Dot woman," Mara corrected gently. "And I'm not trying to complicate anything. I'm just trying not to get kidnapped or killed by hiding behind Mr. Romano." "Real convenient." Mara set down her coffee cup. "You're right. It is convenient. It's also terrifying, humiliating, and not at all what I wanted. But here I am, so maybe we can both make the best of it." The woman stared at her, then returned to her vegetables. "Sandwiches are in the fridge. Help yourself." It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile either. Progress. Mara found Vittorio in what appeared to be his office, a room lined with bookshelves and dark wood furniture. Enzo sat across from him, and both men looked up when she knocked. "I can come back," Mara said. "No. Come in." Vittorio gestured to a chair. "We were just discussing you." That wasn't ominous at all. Enzo's expression was carved from ice. "Miss Santos, sleep well?" "Well enough." "Good." He leaned forward. "Because I have questions. Starting with, where were you 3 months ago?" Mara blinked. "Working at Stella's diner." "Why? And before that?" "Same place. For 2 years." She looked between them. "What's going on?" "Standard security check," Vittorio said, but his jaw was tight. "It's more than standard." Enzo cut in. "A woman appears out of nowhere, sits on the boss's lap during a very public dinner, and now she's under this roof. You see how that looks?" "Like I made a desperate choice," Mara said. "Or like someone sent you." Enzo pulled out a folder. "Your ex-boyfriend, Daniel Chun." "Know who his uncle is?" Mara's stomach dropped. He never mentioned an uncle, Thomas Chun. A small-time loan shark with connections to the Koslov's family. Enzo's eyes were hard. Our rivals, the room seemed to tilt. "You think Daniel sent me to spy?" The thought crossed my mind. That's insane. Daniel's a narcissistic accountant who can't handle rejection. He doesn't have the brains or the guts for espionage. Maybe. Or maybe he's smarter than you think. Enzo slid the folder across the desk. 3 days before your chance encounter at Aurelio's, Daniel had coffee with his uncle. 2 days after, his uncle met with someone from the Kozlov's organization. Mara's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on her thighs. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about any of this. That's what someone would say if they were bait, Enzo said coldly, or if they were telling the truth. Mara met his eyes. I sat on Vittorio's lap because I was desperate, and he was the scariest person in the room. That's it. No plan. Just panic. Panic can be manufactured, Enzo. Vittorio's voice was quiet but carried weight. Enough. Boss, with respect, we can't. I said enough. Vittorio stood. I've made my decision. Full protection for Miss Santos around the clock. No slips. Enzo's face darkened, especially if she's bait. If they sent her, keeping her close keeps us one step ahead. Vittorio's dark eyes found Mara's, and if she's innocent, then she's under threat because of me, either way. She stays. The consigliere stood stiffly, as you wish. But I'm putting my best people on her background. Everything. School records, medical history, friends, enemies. If there's a connection to the Kozlovs, I'll find it. Do what you need to do, Mara said tiredly. You won't find anything. After Enzo left, silence filled the office. Vittorio poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter and handed her one. I don't usually drink before noon, Mara said. Today's an exception. He clinked his glass against hers. Welcome to life under suspicion. She took a sip. It burned, but in a grounding way. You really think I could be working for your enemies? I think Enzo's job is to consider every possibility. Vittorio sat on the edge of his desk. My job is to make decisions, and I've decided you're staying. Why? Because innocent people don't correct mafia bosses about word choice at dinner. Spies would be more careful. A slight smile. You're too genuine to be fake. That might be the strangest compliment I've ever received. Get used to strange. It's all we have here. The next few days fell into an uncomfortable rhythm. Mara moved through the villa like a ghost. Everyone pretended not to see. The staff, except for the cook, Maria, who'd warmed slightly, treated her with cold professionalism. Guards followed at a distance, present but silent. On the 3rd morning, Mara found her breakfast dishes still on the table from the night before. The maid had cleaned everything else but deliberately left hers. She carried them to the kitchen herself. Maria looked up, surprised. I can do my own dishes, Mara said. That's not how things work here. Maybe it should be. I'm not helpless. Maria studied her. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone weaker, someone who'd cry or throw tantrums. She wiped her hands on her apron. Someone who'd demand things. I spent 3 years with a man who treated me like I was demanding when I asked for basic respect. Mara rinsed her plate. I'm not that person anymore. I don't want special treatment. I just want to be left alone. Can't leave you alone. Boss's orders. Then at least treat me like a person. Mara turned. I didn't ask to be here, but since I am, I'm not going to act like I'm above anyone. That evening, her dishes were clean when she entered her room. A small gesture, but it meant something. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the household shifted. Not warm, never warm, but less cold. The guards nodded when she passed. Maria saved her leftovers. Even Mrs. Chen's icy glares thawed to merely disapproving looks. Mara learned the rhythm of the house. She stayed out of the way during business hours, didn't ask questions about the men who came and went, and made herself useful by helping Maria with prep work in the kitchen. You don't have to do this, Maria said one afternoon, watching her chop onions. I know, but I'm going crazy with nothing to do. Most guests would be shopping or getting their nails done. I'm not most guests. Maria smiled. Actually smiled. No, you're not. That night at dinner, smaller this time, just Vittorio and 2 associates, Enzo walked in late. He pulled Vittorio aside, their conversation low and urgent. When Vittorio returned to the table, his expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes found Mara's and held them. We traced the men who attacked you, he said, low-level muscle hired by the Kozlovs. They wanted leverage. Against you, Mara said. Against me. He paused. Your ex-boyfriend gave them your address, your schedule, everything. But the investigation shows he was manipulated, used. His uncle played him. Relief and anger warred in Mara's chest. So I'm not bait. No. Enzo's voice came from behind her. You're a victim. I was wrong. Mara turned. The consigliere's face was still hard, but something had shifted. Not trust, not yet, but acknowledgement. I'm sorry, he said stiffly. You were protecting him, Mara said. I get it. Enzo nodded once, then left. Vittorio raised his glass. To surviving day 4, Mara raised hers back. To passing the test. You didn't just pass, he said quietly. You impressed them. That's harder. Later, alone in her room, Mara realized something had changed. She wasn't a prisoner anymore. She wasn't even really a guest. She was becoming part of the household. The question was, did she want to be? Across town, in a cramped apartment that smelled of takeout and desperation, Daniel Chun stared at his phone screen. The photo was everywhere. Still, 5 days later, and people were still talking about it. Mara on Romano's lap. Mara being escorted into his car. Mara disappearing behind those iron gates like she'd been swallowed by another world. His world. The one she had rejected Daniel for. "You look terrible," his Uncle Thomas said from the doorway. He was a compact man in an expensive suit with eyes that calculated probabilities faster than most people breathed. "She made me look like a fool," Daniel muttered. "She made you look weak. There's a difference." Thomas sat down uninvited. "I warned you about that girl. Too smart for her own good. Too independent. I could have fixed that." "No, you couldn't." "But I can." Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" Thomas pulled out his phone, showing a text exchange. "The Kozlovs' family is very interested in Vittorio Romano's recent distraction. They're willing to pay for information, movement schedules, security details, anything that might help them understand his vulnerabilities. I don't know any of that. But you know Mara. You know how she thinks, what matters to her, how to get under her skin." Thomas leaned forward. "You help them hurt Romano by hurting her. You get paid, and you get your revenge." Daniel's hands clenched. The rational part of his brain, the accountant part, knew this was insane. You didn't cross the Romano family. You didn't work with the Kozlovs unless you had a death wish. But the other part of him, the part that had watched Mara walk away over and over, the part that had seen her look at Romano with something she'd never shown Daniel, that part wanted to watch it all burn. "How much?" he asked. Thomas smiled. "Enough to disappear after. Start over somewhere warm." And Mara? Collateral damage. She chose her side. Daniel thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. "I'm in." Back at the Romano estate, Mara couldn't sleep. It was past midnight, and the villa was quiet except for the occasional footstep of a guard making rounds. She tried reading, tried watching something on her phone, tried everything except the one thing that might actually work: going outside. The gardens had looked peaceful during the day. Maybe at night they'd be peaceful enough to calm her racing thoughts. She slipped on a cardigan and padded barefoot down the hallway, past marble columns and old portraits whose eyes seemed to follow her. The side door leading to the gardens was unlocked, probably because the place was already a fortress. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass. A stone path wound through manicured hedges, leading to a small courtyard with a fountain. The water's gentle trickle was exactly what she'd needed. Can't sleep? Mara jumped, spinning to find Vittorio, emerging from the shadows. He wore dark pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not." He moved to sit on the fountain's edge. "I come here when the walls feel too close, helps me think." Mara hesitated, then joined him, maintaining a respectful distance. "What do you think about?" "Choices, consequences, whether the people I protect are worth the enemies I make." He glanced at her. "Tonight, I'm thinking about you." That sounds ominous. Not ominous, curious. Vittorio studied her profile in the moonlight. That night at Aurelio's, most people would have panicked, frozen, or tried to run. You walked straight to a stranger and sat on his lap. Why? Mara was quiet for a moment, watching the fountain, because panicking never worked with Daniel. If I showed fear, he fed on it, made it worse. I learned early that the only way to survive him was to do the unexpected. And you thought sitting on a mafia boss's lap was unexpected enough? I thought you were the scariest person in the room, and I needed Daniel to be scared. She turned to face him. I didn't know who you were. I just knew you had power. The kind that makes men like Daniel remember they're small. You gambled everything on a stranger's mercy. I gambled everything on a stranger's ego. She smiled slightly. Men with power don't like being ignored. I figured you'd play along just to see what happened. Vittorio laughed, a real laugh, low and surprised. You manipulated me. I asked for help. You chose to give it. Most people wouldn't see the difference. I spent 3 years with someone who couldn't tell the difference between asking and demanding. I know exactly where the line is. Mara pulled her cardigan tighter. I'm sorry if I made your life more complicated. You did, but complicated isn't always bad. He was quiet for a moment. You want to know why I really helped you that night? Because you saw the bruises on my wrist? Partly. but mostly because you whispered, please. You didn't demand or expect. You asked with dignity. His dark eyes found hers. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone either fears me or wants something from me. You just wanted safety, and you gave it. Why? Because I remember what it's like to feel powerless. The vulnerability in his voice was startling. My father built this empire with blood and fear. I inherited it. But before that, I was just a kid watching my mother jump at shadows, never knowing if my father would come home. She asked for safety too. No one gave it to her. Mar's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something. He turned to fully face her. Power without protection is just violence. And violence without purpose is just cruelty. So you protect people. I protect people who ask, who need it, who deserve it. His gaze held hers. You're all three. The air between them shifted, charged with something Mara couldn't quite name. Not romance, not yet, but understanding, recognition. Two people who'd learned to survive in different kinds of danger. Your consigliere still doesn't trust me, she said. Enzo doesn't trust anyone except me, and sometimes not even me, Vittorio smiled. But he respects you. That's more important. How do you know? Because he apologized. Enzo never apologizes. He was protecting you. I can't fault him for that. Most people would. Vittorio stood, offering his hand. You're not most people, Mara Santos. She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. His grip was warm, steady, and lingered a moment longer than necessary. I should get back before someone thinks I'm escaping, she said. You could leave. I mean it. His voice was serious. I'm not keeping you prisoner. If you want to go. Where would I go? Back to my apartment where people know my address? Back to a job where everyone whispers? She shook her head. At least here I'm safe. Is that the only reason you're staying? Mara looked at him. Really looked at the man who'd helped a stranger, who'd opened his home despite the risks, who defended her when his own people doubted, who stood in his garden at midnight talking about fear and power and protection. No, she admitted quietly. It's not. Something passed between them. A recognition that whatever this was, protection, alliance, partnership, it was becoming something more, something neither of them had planned for. Good night, Mara, Vittorio said softly. Good night. As she walked back to the villa, Mara realized the walls didn't feel quite so much like a cage anymore. And Vittorio, watching her go, realized that protecting her had stopped feeling like a duty. It had started feeling like a choice. The kind of choice that changed everything. Mara had always been good at noticing things. It was a survival skill she developed during her years with Daniel. Reading body language, tracking moods, spotting inconsistencies before they became explosions. So on her 6th morning at the Romano estate, when she saw Mrs. Chen slip an envelope to a man she didn't recognize near the service entrance, something pinged in her awareness. It was probably nothing. Staff had lives, received mail, talked to people, normal things. But the way Mrs. Chen glanced around first, the way the man pocketed the envelope without looking at it, the way they both moved apart quickly afterward, that wasn't normal. Mara filed it away and went about her day. That afternoon, she was helping Maria prep vegetables in the kitchen when she overheard 2 guards talking in the hallway. Moved a meeting to Thursday. Nobody told me that. You sure? Boss's schedule changed this morning. Check your phone. Mara's hands slowed on the carrots. She'd been with Vittorio at breakfast. He had confirmed a meeting for Wednesday, frustrated because it conflicted with something else. When had it? Thursday. You okay? Maria asked. Yeah, just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was alert. That specific kind of alert that came from knowing something was wrong, but not knowing what. Over the next 2 days, Mara noticed more small things. A guard she'd never seen before, standing post near Vittorio's office. Though Marco had mentioned the regular rotation yesterday. Mrs. Chen making 3 trips to the garden gate within an hour, always when Vittorio was in meetings. A phone conversation she accidentally overheard. Tuesday night, East Wing, 2nd floor, followed by a quick hang-up when the speaker noticed her. None of it was damning on its own, but together they formed a pattern, and patterns meant something. On the 3rd day, Mara found herself in the security office, a room near the garage filled with monitors showing different parts of the estate. Marco was there reviewing footage. Miss Santos, he looked up, surprised. Something wrong? Maybe. Probably not. She hesitated. This could be nothing. She could be paranoid, reading danger into normal behavior because she'd spent years doing exactly that with Daniel. Can I ask you something? Of course. How often do staff members have visitors, like people coming to the service entrance? Marco's expression sharpened slightly. Not often. Why? I saw Mrs. Chen talking to someone 3 days ago. A man I didn't recognize. She gave him an envelope. Could have been personal mail. She looked around first, like she didn't want anyone to see. Mara moved closer to the monitors, and I've noticed the schedule changing. Small things, meeting times, guard rotations, things that feel off. Marco sat down his coffee. How off? I heard guards talking about a Thursday meeting that was supposed to be Wednesday. And there was a new guard near Mr. Romano's office yesterday. I've never seen him before. New guards come through all the time. But you mentioned the rotation schedule 2 days ago. You said everyone was accounted for. Mara met his eyes. I pay attention, Marco. I had to with my ex. It kept me alive. The security chief was quiet for a long moment, studying her. Then he pulled up a file on his computer. The guard you saw. Tall, dark hair, scar on his neck. Yes, that's Dominic. He's been with us 6 months. Marco's jaw tightened. But you're right, he wasn't scheduled for office duty. He requested the swap last minute. Why would he do that? Good question. Marco started pulling up more footage, his movements quick and precise. You notice anything else? Any detail, no matter how small? Mara thought back. Mrs. Chen goes to the garden gate a lot, always when Mr. Romano is busy. And I heard someone on the phone say Tuesday night, East Wing, 2nd floor. That's tomorrow night. My floor. Marco's expression went cold. Wait here. He left the room quickly. Mara stood among the monitors, her heart pounding. Maybe she'd just gotten someone in trouble over nothing. Maybe paranoia was contagious, and she'd caught it from living in a house full of suspicious people. 10 minutes later, Marco returned with Vittorio. The Don's face was carefully neutral, but his eyes were intense. Tell me exactly what you told Marco, Vittorio said, without preamble. Mara repeated everything. Mrs. Chen's envelope, the schedule changes, Dominic's unexplained presence, the overheard phone call. Vittorio listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker. The phone call, he said. Male or female voice? Male. Younger, I think, 20s maybe. And they said Tuesday night, specific Tuesday night, East Wing, 2nd floor. Then they hung up when they saw me. Vittorio exchanged a look with Marco. That's tomorrow. The East Wing, 2nd floor is my room, Mara finished. And the guest rooms. Why would someone? She stopped, understanding flooding in. They're planning something. Could be surveillance. Could be access. Vittorio's voice was tight. Either way, you just flagged a security breach. I could be wrong. Your instincts kept you alive with an abuser for 3 years. He stepped closer. I trust them. Marco, I want a review of all footage from the past week. Check communications. Run a background on everyone who's had access to the East Wing. Marco was already moving, and I'll put extra eyes on Mrs. Chen and Dominic. After Marco left, Vittorio studied Mara with something like wonder. How did you notice all this? I told you, I learned to read patterns. With Daniel, missing a mood shift could mean a night of screaming or worse, so I watched. I learned. She wrapped her arms around herself. I thought I was being paranoid. You weren't. You were being careful. He moved to the monitors, studying the different camera angles. Most of my people have been with me for years. They see what they expect, but you're new. You notice what doesn't fit. You think there's really a traitor? I think there's someone feeding information to people who want me dead. And you just help me narrow down the suspects. Vittorio turned back to her. From now on, if you notice anything, and I mean anything, you come to me or Marco immediately. Understood? Yes. I mean it, Mara. Your observations might save lives, including yours. The weight of that settled over her. She'd stumbled into something bigger than Daniel's revenge or rival families wanting leverage. This was internal, a betrayal from within the household. Tomorrow night, Vittorio said quietly. Whatever they're planning for the East Wing, we'll be ready. But I'm moving you to the West Wing, my quarters. Mara's eyes widened. That seems. It is safe. His voice left no room for argument. If someone's targeting your location, you don't stay there. What about Mrs. Chen and Dominic? If you move me, won't they know something's wrong? Good point, Vittorio considered. We keep you in your room. But look, with Marco's team watching and me nearby, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He met her eyes. You just proved you're more than a guest under protection. You're an asset, and I protect my assets. It should have sounded cold, transactional. Instead, it sounded like respect. Thank you, Mara said quietly. Don't thank me yet. If you're right about Tuesday night, things are about to get dangerous. He moved toward the door, then paused. Mara, in my world, people who notice things either become very valuable or very dead. You just became valuable. Let's keep it that way. After he left, Mara stood in the security office, surrounded by screens showing every angle of the estate. Somewhere in this house was someone working against Vittorio, someone who knew the schedules, the rotations, the vulnerabilities, someone who'd planned something for tomorrow night. And somehow, Mara had become the key to stopping it. She just hoped her instincts were as reliable as Vittorio believed. The charity gala was the last place Mara wanted to be. You don't have to come, Vittorio had said that morning, adjusting his bow tie in front of the mirror. You're going to a public event with a target on your back, and you want me to stay here alone? Mara had countered. After everything we learned yesterday, he'd smiled at that. Fair point. Now, standing in the ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel in a borrowed navy gown that fit suspiciously well, Mara felt like an imposter. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over Chicago's elite, politicians, CEOs, old money families who'd learned to pretend the Romano name didn't make them nervous. Vittorio moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands, making small talk, playing the role of legitimate businessman. Marco and 3 other guards maintained a careful perimeter, dressed in suits that couldn't quite hide their alert postures. You okay? Vittorio asked quietly during a lull. Peachy. I love being stared at by people who think I'm your mistress. Let them think it. Keeps them from asking questions. He handed her a glass of champagne. Just stay close. We'll leave in an hour. But an hour felt like 3. Mara smiled politely at introductions, nodded through conversations about stocks and summer homes, and tried not to think about how exposed they were. Too many exits, too many windows, too many people she didn't know. Her survival instincts were screaming. We should go, she murmured to Vittorio during a conversation with a city councilman. Soon, he said without breaking his smile. Mara forced herself to breathe. She was being paranoid again. This was a charity event, not a war zone. Security was everywhere. Nothing was going to. She saw it. Through the ballroom's tall windows, in the circular drive where valets parked cars, a black sedan sat idling. Nothing unusual about that, except it had been there for 20 minutes. Same spot, same position, engine running, and it was angled wrong. Most cars waited parallel to the entrance. This one faced it head-on, like it was ready to move fast. The windows were tinted dark enough that she couldn't see inside, but the driver's side was pointed directly at the exit doors. The exit doors where Vittorio's car was parked. Mara's mouth went dry. Vittorio. One moment, he said, finishing his sentence to the councilman. Now. Her voice was low but urgent. He must have heard something in her tone because he immediately excused himself, turning to her with sharp attention. What is it? That black sedan by the east exit. It's been there too long and its position is wrong. Vittorio's eyes flicked to the window, then to Marco across the room. Some silent communication passed between them. Marco nodded and spoke into his wrist mic. Could be nothing, Vittorio said, but his body had gone tense. Or it could be everything. Mara scanned the room. We should leave through the back. If we leave through the back, we look scared. If we look scared, you look smart, Vittorio. Please, that car is wrong. He studied her face, weighing her instincts against protocol, against pride. Then he nodded. Marco, back exit, now. Marco moved immediately, redirecting the other guards. They formed a loose circle around Vittorio and Mara, guiding them toward the ballroom's rear exit that led to the service corridor. They were halfway across the room when Mara glanced back at the window. The sedan's doors were opening. Run! She shouted. Everything happened at once. 4 men emerged from the sedan, pulling automatic weapons from inside their coats. The crowd near the windows screamed. Someone knocked over a table. Glass shattered. Mara grabbed Vittorio's arm and yanked him sideways just as the first window exploded inward. Bullets tore through the space where he'd been standing, chewing up the marble floor and shattering a champagne fountain. They hit the ground hard, Mara covering her head as Marco and the guards returned fire. The sound was deafening. Gunshots, screams, the sharp crack of more windows breaking. Vittorio pulled Mara behind an overturned table. Stay down, like I'm going anywhere else, she gasped. Marco's voice cut through the chaos. South exit clear. Move! Vittorio hauled Mara to her feet and they ran bent low, guards surrounding them in a protective formation. More gunfire erupted behind them, the attackers advancing into the ballroom. The service corridor was chaos. Staff members screamed and scattered. A waiter dropped an entire tray of dishes. Mara's borrowed heels slipped on the polished floor, but Vittorio's grip kept her upright. "Exit ahead," Marco shouted. Cars pulling up. They burst through the door into the cool night air. A black SUV screeched to a stop in front of them, rear door already open. Marco pushed them inside, throwing himself in after, and the vehicle was moving before the door closed. More gunfire. The rear window spiderwebbed, but didn't break. Bulletproof. The driver took corners fast enough to make Mara's stomach lurch. "Everyone okay?" Vittorio demanded. "Fine, boss," Marco said, already on his phone. "Team Alpha, report. Did we get any of them?" Through the speaker. "Two down. Two escaped. Police are arriving. We're extracting now." Mara realized she was shaking. The adrenaline that had kept her sharp was draining away, leaving her hollow. She'd almost died. They'd almost died. If she hadn't noticed that car. "Hey," Vittorio's hand found hers in the darkness of the SUV. "Look at me." She turned. Face was serious, intense, but not angry. "You saved my life," he said simply. "I just noticed a car. You noticed what everyone else missed, including my trained security team." His grip tightened. "If you hadn't said something, if you hadn't trusted your instincts, I'd be dead right now." The weight of that settled over the vehicle. Marco met her eyes in the rearview mirror, nodding once. Respect, acknowledgement. "I was scared," Mara admitted quietly. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." Vittorio released her hand but didn't move away. "Thank you, Mara. I owe you my life. You saved mine first. At the restaurant, at my apartment, we're even." "No," his voice was soft but firm. "We're not even. We're partners. There's a difference. Partners. Not protector and protected, not boss and guest, partners." Mara nodded, still shaking but steadier. "Partners." The SUV pulled through the gates of the Romano estate 20 minutes later. The place looked different now. Not intimidating, but secure, safe. Home. Almost. As they walked inside, Vittorio paused in the foyer. "Tomorrow, we find out who told them I'd be at that gala. Who leaked my schedule." "The same person who's been passing information," Mara said. "Mrs. Chen, Dominic, someone close." "Yes." His jaw tightened. "And when we find them, they'll answer for tonight, for putting you in danger. Not just him, her. Like her safety mattered as much as his." "Get some rest," Vittorio said. "Tomorrow we end this." But as Mara climbed the stairs to her room, she knew rest wouldn't come easy. They'd survive tonight because of luck and quick thinking. Tomorrow, they'd need more than that. Tomorrow, they'd need to unmask a traitor. Mara awoke to raised voices. It was barely dawn. Gray light filtering through her windows, but somewhere below her room, men were shouting. She pulled on jeans and a sweater and crept into the hallway. The voices were coming from the basement, a part of the villa she'd never been to, hadn't even known existed. She followed the sound down the main stairs, past the kitchen where Maria was starting breakfast preparations, to a door she'd always assumed was a storage closet. It was cracked open, and the voices were clearer now, telling you everything. "Please, just..." That voice. Mara's blood went cold. She knew that voice. "Daniel." She moved closer to the door, pressing herself against the wall where she wouldn't be seen. Through the crack, she could see concrete steps leading down to what looked like a wine cellar. But instead of bottles, there was a chair, and in that chair, zip-tied and bleeding from a split lip, was her ex-boyfriend. Vittorio stood in front of him, arms crossed. Marco flanked him, along with two guards Mara didn't recognize. All of them looked calm, professional, terrifying. "Let's try this again," Vittorio said, his voice carrying that cold edge Mara had heard in the restaurant. "Who contacted you first after Aurelio's?" "My uncle Daniel," sobbed. "Thomas Chen. He called me that night, saw the photos online," he said. "He said he knew people who'd pay for information about you." "The Kozlovs? Yes, but I swear I didn't know what they'd do with it. I just wanted." He choked on the words. "I wanted Mara to regret choosing you." Mara's hands clenched. Even now, beaten and terrified, Daniel made it about his wounded ego. "Your Uncle Thomas," Marco said, consulting a tablet. "He works for someone." "Who?" "I don't know. He never said." "Wrong answer." Vittorio's tone didn't change, but Daniel flinched anyway. "I'm telling the truth. He just said there was someone high up, someone who'd been waiting for an opportunity to move against you." The whole thing with Mara, it was perfect timing. "Perfect timing," Vittorio repeated. "Or a perfect setup." Daniel's head snapped up. "What? No, I saw the photos and lost it. That was real. My uncle just capitalized on it." "Did he tell you what to do? Where to send her? What restaurant to choose?" Daniel stopped. "He suggested Aurelio's. Said it was upscale, romantic, that Mara would be impressed." I didn't think. You didn't think. Marco cut in, because you were manipulated, used. Your uncle knew Vittorio would be there that night. He knew what would happen. Mara's heart was pounding. This couldn't be a coincidence. Someone had orchestrated the whole thing, gotten Daniel to pick that restaurant that night, knowing Vittorio would be there, knowing what a desperate woman and a powerful man in the same room might lead to. Who's your uncle's boss? Vittorio demanded again. I told you I don't. Yes, you do, because your uncle had to know Mr. Romano's schedule, had to know his security protocols, had to know which nights he dines alone. Vittorio leaned closer. That's not information the Koslovs have. That's internal. Daniel was shaking now. He mentioned a name once when he was drunk. I didn't think it mattered. What name? Lorenzo. Lorenzo Romano, he said. Daniel swallowed hard. He said, family is just another word for opportunity. The basement went silent. Mara felt like she'd been punched. Lorenzo, Vittorio's cousin. She'd met him once at dinner. Charming, friendly, always deferring to Vittorio, but with eyes that calculated everything. Thank you, Daniel, Vittorio said quietly. You've been very helpful. What happens to me now? You go to the police. You confess to conspiracy, to feeding information to criminals, to everything you've done. Vittorio's voice was ice. And you pray that keeping you alive sends a better message than killing you would. Marco grabbed Daniel's arm, hauling him to his feet. As they moved toward a different exit, Daniel's wild eyes found the crack in the door, found Mara standing there. Mara, he screamed. Mara, please tell them. Tell them I didn't mean. Get him out of here, Vittorio said. They dragged Daniel away, his pleading echoing off concrete walls until a door slammed shut. Mara stood frozen, her mind racing. Lorenzo Romano, Vittorio's own cousin. He'd manipulated Daniel, orchestrated the restaurant encounter, probably fed information to the Kozlovs about the gala, and all because of what? Jealousy. Ambition. She backed away from the door, suddenly desperate to get upstairs before anyone realized she'd been listening. But she'd only made it 3 steps when Vittorio appeared at the top of the basement stairs. Isalkal saw her, knew immediately she'd heard everything. How much? He asked quietly. All of it. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Your cousin. He set this whole thing up. Vittorio climbed the remaining steps, his expression unreadable. I suspected. But suspicion isn't proof. And now you have proof. Because of me. He stopped in front of her. If you hadn't sat on my lap that night, Lorenzo's plan would have stayed hidden. He would have kept feeding information, kept destabilizing my control until he was ready to make his move. Mara's legs felt weak. I didn't mean. I was just trying to escape Daniel. I didn't know. You couldn't have known. But you did it anyway. One desperate choice that unraveled years of careful planning. Something almost like admiration crossed his face. My cousin thinks he's smart, patient, but he didn't account for chaos. For a woman brave enough to sit on a stranger's lap and ask for help. What happens now? Now. Vittorio's expression hardened. Now I confront him. Family or not, betrayal is betrayal. Will you? She couldn't finish the question. Kill him? Vittorio studied her face. Does the answer matter to you? Yes. Why? Because I need to know if the man who saved me is still the man who talked about power and protection in the garden. Mara met his eyes. Or if he's just another Daniel, another man who solves problems with violence. Vittorio was quiet for a long moment. Then Lorenzo will live. But he'll leave Chicago, leave the family, leave everything he tried to take from me. His voice softened. I'm not Daniel Mara, and I'm not my father. Violence is a tool, not a solution. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. Don't thank me. This isn't mercy. It's strategy. But his eyes said something different. Come with me. I want you there when I confront him. Why? Because you're the reason we found him. You deserve to see this finished. They found Lorenzo in the study, reviewing documents with Enzo. The consigliere looked up sharply when they entered, immediately reading the tension in Vittorio's posture. Enzo, leave us, Vittorio said. Boss. Now. Enzo left, closing the door behind him. Lorenzo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Cousin, Miss Santos, to what do I owe? Daniel Shun is in custody, Vittorio said simply. He talked, told us everything about his uncle Thomas, about the person Thomas worked for. He moved closer. About you, Lorenzo? The smile vanished. That's ridiculous. Why would I? Don't. Vittorio's voice cracked like a whip. Don't insult me with lies. You've been undermining me for months, feeding information to the Kozlovs, setting up ambushes, using Mara's ex-boyfriend as your pawn. Lorenzo's face twisted into something ugly. You don't deserve this position. Father should have given the family to me. I'm smarter, more strategic. You're a traitor. Vittorio's calm was more frightening than any rage. And you're done. Pack your things. You have 24 hours to leave Chicago. If I ever see you again, strategy won't save you. Lorenzo's eyes flicked to Mara, hatred burning there. This is because of her, that little. Finish that sentence, Vittorio said softly, and you won't make it 24 hours. Lorenzo grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Mara released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. It was over. The traitor was exposed, Daniel was finished, and somehow, impossibly, she was still standing. You okay? Vittorio asked. I think so. She looked at him. What happens now? Now, he smiled slightly. Now we rebuild together. Partners. Mara nodded together. Lorenzo Romano didn't leave Chicago, he tried. He made it as far as the airport with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to Miami. But the Koslov's family, furious that their inside source had been exposed and cut off, found him first. They left his body in an alley 3 blocks from his apartment, a message to anyone else who thought playing both sides was smart. Vittorio received the news with a single nod and no visible emotion. Family doesn't excuse betrayal, he told his assembled lieutenants. Remember that. But Mara, standing in the back of the room where these meetings now included her, saw the tightness around his eyes, saw the way he poured a drink that night, and stared at it for 10 minutes without taking a sip. Lorenzo had been family, and now he was gone. The household changed overnight. Mrs. Chen, who'd been feeding Lorenzo information through coded notes, was quietly let go with a severance package and a warning never to return. The guard Dominic disappeared the same day, whether fired or dealt with more permanently. Mara didn't ask. New security protocols went into effect. New faces appeared among the guards. And through it all, people looked at Mara differently. No more cold shoulders in hallways. No more suspicious glances. When she walked into a room, conversations didn't stop. They paused respectfully and included her. Maria started teaching her to make fresh pasta, chattering about her grandchildren, while Mara's hands learned to work the dough. The guards nodded greetings by name. Even Enzo, perpetually suspicious Enzo, asked her opinion during a security briefing about monitoring staff communications. You notice things, he said simply. We should use that. She wasn't a guest anymore. She wasn't even just protected. She was part of the household. 3 days after Lorenzo's death, Mara found herself in the library, a room she discovered on the 2nd floor filled with leather-bound books and comfortable chairs. She was reading when Vittorio appeared in the doorway. May I? He asked. It's your house. It's your space. There's a difference. He sat in the chair across from her, looking tired. Can't sleep? Too much quiet. I'm used to sirens and neighbors fighting through thin walls. She sat down her book. You? Too much noise up here. He tapped his temple. Can't shut it off. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mara asked, Do you regret it? What happened to Lorenzo? I regret that it was necessary, that he made choices that led there. Vittorio's voice was quiet. We grew up together. He taught me to ride a bike. I was supposed to be the best man at his wedding. What happened? My father died, left everything to me instead of him. Lorenzo was older, thought he deserved it more. He stared at the empty fireplace. Maybe he did. He was smarter in a lot of ways, more strategic. But my father knew Lorenzo lacked something essential. What? Loyalty. The ability to put family before ambition. Vittorio looked at her. You have that. You protected me at the gala even though you barely knew me. Even though running would have been safer. Running wasn't an option. We were in it together. Exactly. Lorenzo never understood together, only ahead. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry you got dragged into this, into our family's dysfunction. I dragged myself into it, Mara smiled slightly. Remember? I sat on your lap. Best worst decision either of us ever made. They laughed. Real laughter that released some of the tension both had been carrying. Can I ask you something? Vittorio said after the laughter faded. That night at Aurelio's, when Daniel had you cornered. Why didn't you just leave? Mara considered the question, because I'd been leaving for 3 years. Every fight, every insult, every time he made me feel small, I left inside my head. I became someone smaller, quieter, less. That night, I was done leaving. I wanted to stay, to stand up, even if it meant sitting on a stranger's lap to do it. That takes courage. Or stupidity. I'm still not sure which. Both. The best decisions usually are. He leaned forward. What will you do after this is over? After it's safe? The question caught her off guard. She'd been so focused on surviving each day, she hadn't thought about after. I don't know. Find a new job, I guess. A new apartment. Start over, you could stay. Her heart skipped. As what? Your employee? As you. Mara Santos, who notices things, who doesn't back down from Enzo, who makes terrible jokes when she's nervous, and helps Maria in the kitchen even though she doesn't have to. His dark eyes held hers. Stay, because this place is better with you in it. Vittorio, I'm not asking for anything except your presence. No obligations. No expectations. He stood, moving to the window. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me. Power, money, protection, connection. You're the first person in years who just wants to be safe. It's refreshing. Mara joined him at the window, looking out at the garden where they'd talked that night. I'm not that noble. I do want things. Like what? To feel like I belong somewhere. To not wake up afraid. To matter, she glanced at him. To be someone's partner, not their property. You already are. His voice was soft. You've been my partner since you saved my life at the gala. Maybe even before that, since you trusted me enough to ask for help. They stood there in the quiet library. The space between them was charged but comfortable. Not passion, not yet, but something deeper. Understanding, trust, the foundation that passion could build on if given time. My mother used to say that family isn't about blood, Vittorio said quietly. It's about who stands beside you when the world burns. Lorenzo was blood, but he walked away. You're not blood, but you stood firm. I didn't have much choice. You had every choice. You could have run at any point, gone to the police, witness protection, disappeared. He turned to face her fully. But you stayed. You helped. You became essential. Is that what I am? Essential? He stopped, searching for words. You're the reason I remember why I do this, why I protect people, why power should serve something beyond itself. His hand lifted, almost touching her face before he caught himself and lowered it. You're important, Mara. Not because of what you can do for me, but because of who you are. Tears pricked Mara's eyes. After years of Daniel telling her she was worthless, difficult, too much, hearing that she mattered simply by existing felt like breathing after drowning. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. The real me. Not the descabos from the restaurant or the woman who needed saving. Just me. That's the only you I've ever seen. They stayed in the library until Dawn started painting the sky pink, talking about everything and nothing. About his childhood and hers, fears and hopes, and the strange path that had brought them together. When they finally went to their separate rooms, something had shifted again. Not into romance, not yet, but into something even more dangerous. Into love that was earned, not demanded, built on trust, not control. The kind of love that could survive anything, because it already had. The attack came 3 nights later, at 2 a.m., when the household was at its quietest. Mara Thaza was in her room, actually sleeping for once, when the first explosion shook the villa. She bolted upright, heart hammering, as alarms shrieked through the halls. Gunfire. Close. Too close. She grabbed her phone and ran into the hallway in her pajamas. Other doors were opening, guards emerging, weapons drawn. Maria stumbled out of her room, eyes wide with fear. What's happening? The cook gasped. Stay in your room, one of the guards ordered, rushing past toward the stairs. But Mara's mind was already racing. The explosion had come from the south side, the main entrance. If they breached there, they'd push toward the center of the villa, toward Vittorio's study, where he'd been working late with Enzo. More gunfire, shouting from below. The attackers were inside. Mara grabbed Maria's arm, the east wing. Is there a way to seal it off? What? I don't. The security briefing last week. Marco mentioned the east wing has reinforced doors, fire protocols. Mara was pulling Maria toward the stairs. We can lock it down, keep them from reaching the west side. I'm a cook, not a. You've been here 20 years. You know this house better than anyone. They reached the landing below. The main floor was chaos. Guards trading fire with intruders pushing through the shattered entrance. Can we seal the east wing or not? Maria's fear crystallized into determination. Yes, there's a master panel in the library, but we need. Show me now. They ran down the hall as bullets tore through walls below them. 2 more staff members emerged, young guards named Tony and Vincent, who Mara recognized from kitchen duty. You two, Mara shouted. With us. Miss Santos, you should. I know the protocols. I know where they're heading. She pointed toward the east corridor. We lock down this wing. We cut off their route to the study. Buy time for Marco's team. Tony and Vincent exchanged glances, then nodded. They fell in behind Mara and Maria as they raced toward the library. The master panel was hidden behind a painting. Oh, of course it was. Maria's shaking hands input a code, and the panel swung open, revealing controls for doors, gates, and security shutters throughout the East Wing. How do we? Vincent started. Here, Mara's fingers flew over the touchscreen. 3 weeks of watching Marco run drills, of listening to security briefings, of paying attention when everyone thought she was just a guest. East corridor doors first, then the stairwell access. Heavy steel doors began descending at key choke points throughout the wing. Through the window, Mara could see muzzle flashes in the garden, more attackers trying to flank around. They're going for the side entrance, she said. Maria, can we lock down the eastern courtyard door? Yes, but staff are still. Do it. Anyone still out there knows to get to the panic room. Mara hoped that was true. She activated the courtyard lockdown. A heavy gate slammed down across the side entrance, just as 3 masked figures tried to breach it. They're trapped between the main guards and the eastern defenses, Tony said, checking his weapon. Smart. Not smart, just paying attention. Mara watched the screens showing different camera angles. The attackers were being funneled into kill zones where Marco's team had a clear advantage. How do we help the main team? There. Vincent pointed to another control. Backup lighting. If we kill it in sections, we can blind them in the main corridor. Do it. The villa plunged into strategic darkness. Not everywhere, just where it would confuse the intruders. The guards knew the house, the attackers didn't. Gunfire intensified, then started to fade. Orders were being shouted. Retreat commands. They're pulling back, Maria whispered. Mara's phone buzzed. Marco, status. East wing locked down. All staff secured. Attackers contained to main corridor. Good work. Stay where you are. 10 minutes later, it was over. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The gunfire stopped. Guards moved through the villa checking rooms, securing the perimeter. Vittorio appeared in the library doorway, smoke-stained and furious, but unharmed. His eyes found Mara immediately, scanning her for injuries. You locked down the east wing, he said. Yes. Kept them from flanking our position in the study. Yes. He moved closer, taking in her pajamas, her bare feet. Maria standing behind her with Tony and Vincent. You took charge, led the staff, used the security protocols. I've been paying attention, Mara said simply. Something shifted in his expression, passed from fury to relief to something deeper. Pride? Maybe. You saved us. Again. We saved each other. That's what partners do. Marco entered, holstering his weapon. All clear, boss. 6 hostiles down, 3 captured. They were the Koslovs' remaining muscle. A last desperate push. Because Lorenzo's dead and they've lost their inside advantage, Enzo added, appearing behind Marco. He looked at Mara. So they tried brute force. It would have worked if someone hadn't locked down half the villa and funneled them into our crossfire. All eyes turned to Mara. I just did what made sense, she said. You did what a member of this family does, Vittorio corrected. You protected your own. Not his people. Hers too. Maria squeezed her shoulder. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Or the stupidest, Mara said, but she was smiling. Both, Vittorio said, echoing their conversation from the library. The best decisions usually are. As dawn broke over the estate, damage assessment began. Shattered windows, bullet holes in walls, the main door completely destroyed. It would take weeks to repair. But everyone was alive, and the threat was finally over. Mara stood in the garden, watching the sunrise, still in her pajamas, when Vittorio found her. You should rest. He said, I'm too wired. Ask me again in 6 hours. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Tonight proves something, that we need better doors, that you're not here because you need protection. You're here because you belong. He turned to face her. This is your home now, Mara, if you want it to be. Home. The word settled around her like a blanket. Not a safe house, not a temporary shelter. Home. I want it to be, she said quietly. But what does that mean? What am I exactly? You're. Vittorio paused, choosing his words carefully. You're the woman who walked into my life uninvited and refused to leave, who saw past the power to the person, who stands with me, not behind me. His hand found hers. You're mine, if you'll have me. Mara's breath caught. Yours? And I'm yours. Equal partners. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I'm not asking you to be my wife or my girlfriend or any label you're not ready for. I'm asking you to stay, to build something here with me. She looked at their joined hands, thinking about the journey from that desperate moment at Aurelio's to this quiet garden at dawn. How fear had become trust, How protection had become partnership. How survival had become something that felt dangerously close to love. Yes, she said. I'll stay. Vittorio pulled her close, and Mara let herself lean into his warmth. Safe, valued, home. The household was stirring inside, repairs beginning, breakfast being prepared, life moving forward, and Mara was part of it all. No longer a guest, no longer just protected. She was family. 2 weeks after the attack, the Romano estate looked almost normal again. New windows gleamed in their frames. Fresh paint covered the bullet holes. The main entrance had been rebuilt with steel-reinforced doors that looked elegant but could withstand a small army. Workers finished the last repairs while life inside the villa returned to its rhythm. Mara stood in the garden, the same spot where she'd accepted Vittorio's offer to stay. But daylight made everything look different, clearer, real. The contractors say, "We're done by Friday," Vittorio said, joining her. He'd been in meetings all morning with insurance adjusters and security consultants. Everything back to normal. Normal, Mara repeated. Is anything about this place normal? Fair point. He was quiet for a moment. I need to talk to you about something. Her stomach tightened. That sounds serious. It is. He turned to face her fully. The threat's over. Lorenzo's gone. The Kozlovs are scattered. Daniel's facing federal charges. You're safe now. Completely safe. Okay. Which means you don't owe me anything. He said it carefully, like he'd rehearsed. That first night, I said you'd leave with me. You did. But that was survival. This is different. This is choice. Mara's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying you're free to go. No obligations. No debts. His dark eyes held hers. I'll set you up with anything you need. A new apartment, a new job, security if you want it. You can walk away from all of this. From me. She should have expected this. Should have known that eventually he'd offer her an exit, but hearing it still felt like the ground shifting beneath her feet. You want me to leave? She asked quietly. No. The word came out harsh, honest. But I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you're afraid or grateful or trapped. He stepped closer. You've spent years with someone who wouldn't let you leave. I won't be that person. Not ever. Mara looked around the garden, at the villa rising behind them with its old stone and new windows. At Maria, visible through the kitchen window, kneading dough. At Marco, walking the perimeter with 2 guards, professional and alert. 2 weeks ago, this place had been a fortress, a cage, somewhere she'd been brought for protection, surrounded by people who didn't trust her. Now? Now, it was the kitchen where she learned to make pasta, the library where she and Vittorio talked until dawn, the security office where her observations mattered, the dinner table where Enzo asked her opinion and actually listened. It was home. I don't owe you anything, she said slowly. You're right about that. Vittorio's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. But I'm not staying because I owe you, Mara smiled. I'm staying because this is where I want to be, where my instincts matter, where I matter. She moved closer to him. You asked me what I wanted that night in the library, remember? To belong somewhere, to not wake up afraid, to be someone's partner, not their property. I have all of that here, with you. She took his hand. So, no, I'm not leaving. Not because you rescued me, but because we rescued each other. The tension in Vittorio's shoulders released. You're sure? Completely. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her in a way that felt nothing like possession, and everything like home. They stood there in the garden, the autumn sun warm on their faces, until Maria called from the kitchen window. Dinner in an hour, and you're both helping. That night, the dining room felt different, smaller, more intimate. It was just Mara, Vittorio, Enzo, Marco, and Maria. The core household, people who'd survived everything together. The meal was simple but perfect. Maria's pasta, fresh bread, wine from Vittorio's private collection. Conversation flowed easily. Laughter, stories, planning for the future. As dessert arrived, Vittorio raised his glass. The table quieted. To endings and beginnings, he said, and to the woman whose instincts saved us all. His eyes found Mara's, warm with something that looked dangerously like love. All that from one reckless seat, Mara raised her glass, smiling. Not reckless. Necessary. Necessary, he agreed, and the word held weight. Everything that had happened, the fear, the danger, the betrayal, the battles, had been necessary to get them here. To this moment, to this family they'd built from chaos. They drank, and Maria insisted on seconds, and Enzo actually laughed at one of Marco's terrible jokes. The evening stretched into night, comfortable and warm. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Mara and Vittorio sat in the library. Her feet were tucked under her on the couch. His arm rested along the back, not quite touching her, but close enough to feel his warmth. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live." He said it simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. "We rebuild. We grow. We face whatever comes next. Together, together." He turned his head to look at her. Always together. Mara leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the rise and fall of his breathing. Outside, the estate was quiet, peaceful, protected. She thought about the girl who'd sat on a stranger's lap 2 weeks ago. Desperate and terrified, that girl had been looking for safety, for someone to save her. She'd found something better. She'd found herself, her strength, her value, and she'd found a partner who saw all of it and chose to stand beside her. Not ahead, not behind. Beside, as equals, as partners, as family. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for giving me a choice, for letting me stay." Vittorio's hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining like they'd done this 1,000 times before, and would do it 1,000 times more. "Thank you for sitting on my lap," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Mara laughed. Real, genuine laughter that felt like freedom. Best worst decision I ever made. Best worst decision we both made. They sat there as the fire burned low and the night deepened. A mafia don and the woman whose one desperate act had changed everything. Not his property, not his responsibility. His partner, his equal, his home. And she was exactly where she belonged.